Okay, here we go again. Um,
All of his
I'm
co-workers
gonna
were
try.
gone. What could it mean? Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps he had simply missed a memo.
I'm gonna try doing something different this time. Uh, Possibly. I'm intrigued by that elevator. I'm gonna try the
Stanley
elevator.
clicked on literally every single door in the office because he doesn't pick up well on cues from his environment.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful.
When Stanley came to a set of two open doors, he entered the door on his left.
Stanley clicked on every door. I mean, what a wonderful blurring of the sort of character in the world fiction and the
Yet there
knowledge
was
that
not
I
a
am a
single
player
person
sitting
there
at a
either.
computer.
Feeling a wave of disbelief, Stanley decided to go up to his boss's office, hoping he might find an answer there. Coming to a staircase, Stanley walked upstairs to his boss's office.
Can't resist.
But Stanley just couldn't do it. He considered the possibility of facing his boss, admitting he had left his post during work hours. He might be fired for that. And in such a competitive economy, why had he taken that risk? All because he believed everyone had vanished? His boss would think he was crazy. And then something occurred to Stanley. Maybe, he thought to himself, maybe I am crazy. All of my co-workers blinking mysteriously out of existence in a single moment for no reason at all? None of it made any logical sense. And as Stanley pondered this, he began to make other strange observations. For example, why couldn't he see his feet when he looked down? Why did doors close automatically behind him wherever he went? And for that matter, these rooms were starting to look pretty familiar. Were they simply repeating? No, Stanley said to himself, this is all too strange. This can't be real. And at last, he came to the conclusion that had been on the tip of his tongue. He just hadn't found the words for it. I'm dreaming, he yelled. This is all a dream. Oh, what a relief Stanley felt to have finally found an answer, an explanation. His co-workers weren't actually gone. He wasn't going to lose his job. He wasn't crazy after all. And he thought to himself, I suppose I'll wake up soon. I'll have to go back to my boring real-life job pushing buttons. I may as well enjoy this while I'm still lucid. So, he imagined himself flying and began to gently float above the ground.
Whoa!
Then he imagined himself soaring through space on a magical starfield, and it too appeared.
That's
It was
cool.
so much fun, and Stanley marveled that he had still not woken up. How was he remaining so lucid? And then perhaps the strangest question of them all entered Stanley's head. One he was amazed he hadn't asked himself sooner. Why is there a voice in my head dictating everything that I'm doing and thinking? Now the voice was describing itself being considered by Stanley, who found it particularly strange. I'm dreaming about a voice describing me, thinking about how it's describing my thoughts, he thought. And while he thought it all very odd and wondered if this voice spoke to all people in their dreams, the truth was that, of course, this was not a dream. How could it be? Was Stanley simply deceiving himself, believing that if he's asleep, he doesn't have to take responsibility for himself? Stanley is as awake right now.
So you will notice that I'm donutting through these repeating rooms. For no particular reason. I don't expect anything to come of that. I could just stand here and listen to the narration, but I prefer to be doing something than to be doing nothing. Um, and it's actually kind of nice that the game accommodates that. It's delivering this narration in a way at a speed and in a medium that means I can do some mindless walking around, and I can even look around at my environment. Not that there's new stuff for me to see, but uh, that's something that you see in games a lot of the time, and I think especially Valve games. Valve games are really good at giving you interesting stuff to listen to while you move around the environment, rather than like stopping the action and giving you a cutscene.
as he's ever been in his life. Now, hearing the voice speak these words was quite a shock to Stanley. After all, he knew for certain, beyond a doubt, that this was in fact a dream. Did the voice not see him float and make the magical stars just a moment ago? How else would the voice explain all that? This voice was a part of himself too. Surely, if he could just... He would prove it. He would prove that he was in control, that this was a dream. So he closed his eyes gently, and he invited himself to wake up. He felt the cool weight of the blanket on his skin, the press of the mattress on his back, the fresh air of a world outside this one. Let me wake up, he thought to himself. I'm through with this dream. I wish it to be over. Let me go back to my job. Let me continue pushing the buttons. Please, it's all I want. I want my apartment, and my wife, and my job. All I want is my life exactly the way it's always been. My life is normal. I am normal. Everything will be fine. I am okay. Stanley began screaming. Please, someone, wake me up. My name is Stanley. I have a boss. I have an office. I am real. Please, just someone tell me I am real. I must be real. I must be. Can anyone hear my voice? Who am I? Who am I? And everything went black. This is the story of a woman named Mariella. Mariella woke up on a day like any other. She arose, got dressed, gathered her belongings, and walked to her place of work. But on this particular day, her walk was interrupted by the body of a man who had stumbled through town talking and screaming to himself, and then collapsed dead on the sidewalk. And although she would soon turn to go call for an ambulance, for just a few brief moments she considered the strange man. He was obviously crazy, this much she knew. Everyone knows what crazy people look like. And in that moment, she thought to herself how lucky she was to be normal. I am sane. I am in control of my mind. I know what is real and what isn't. It was comforting to think this, and in a certain way, seeing this man made her feel better. But then she remembered the meeting she had scheduled for that day. The very important people whose impressions of her would affect her career, and by extension, the rest of her life. She had no time for this, so it was only a moment that she stood there, staring down at the body. And then she turned and ran.
That was dark. That was also kind of surprisingly unambiguous. I mean, I guess there's ambiguity to like what is real, especially in that ending. There's a lot of playing with reality and fantasy, but most of the endings have sort of ended with, you know, it's not really clear what happened or what was going on. I guess it's less about what happened and more about resolving the mystery that's in the first act of this story. The MacGuffin mystery of why are you alone in an office building. That the game, in general, never answers because it's not actually important. It's not what the game's about. So it's interesting that ending sort of gives you well, Stanley was just crazy, as an explanation that kind of resolves everything. It's the only ending that I've seen that I've gotten that feeling from, which is not a complaint, and it's also sort of not really a surprise. This is a game that I think prides itself on doing as much as possible, and so, I think it creates an ending that resolves the core conflict of the game, or the initial conflict of the game, just because, just to try it out, just sort of as to say that it did it. Okay.
All of his co-workers were... Wait, no. This isn't the right office, is it? Is this Stanley's office?
Is it?
When Stanley came to a set of 2 open doors, he entered the door on his left.
There's still so much content down here. Like obvious content, like stuff that I am obviously meant to go and explore.
There was not a single person here either. Feeling a wave of disbelief, Stanley decided to go up to his boss's office. Hoping he might come to a staircase, Stanley walked upstairs to his boss's office.
So, interesting choice. I'm not sure why it was made, that I don't actually get the same interface here that I got in other places. I clicked the up button, which was what I was intending to do, but it's so much less clear when I don't have a little cursor. Let's go up. We just went down. Elevator music, of course. I'm hearing the narrator singing very, very softly. It's becoming less subtle, but at the beginning it was at the point where you really questioned whether or not you were hearing something. I can't quite make out all of... This is an infinite elevator. Okay. Huh. Pretty sure this is the same place. Just 'cause why not? Nope, nope. I'm gonna try it again, but I'm not gonna wait very long. Stanley. Yeah. So this is another this is a consideration. I don't think it's a problem. I think it's, well within the intent of the game, and sort of what it expects. But it's difficult for me to tell the difference between what is going to be a well of content, what is going to be something like really interesting that's going to contain, an ending, and something that's just going to be sort of like a little throwaway joke like this, which is delightful and lots of fun, but is clearly not leading me anywhere. That's entirely intended, right? This is a game that is about sort of the choices that you make as a player, and the things that you know and the things that you don't know and the things that you think you know. So that kind of like playing with expectation, presenting me with something that looks like it's dramatically different. An elevator is almost as obvious as a hand-painted sign that says escape, right? But I go down the escape corridor and I get 20 minutes of content. I go in the elevator and I just get, the narrator humming delightfully for a few minutes. That's it's an interesting thing that within the context of this game, the designer is very clearly, deliberately playing with. But it's something that applies to all games, especially this kind of game, a first-person game like this, where you are trying very, very hard to direct the player's attention, and so you need to be very conscious of what their thought process is, what their expectations are, what they think they know, what they think is going on. Okay.
The moment he entered his manager's office, Stanley froze in his tracks. Not a living soul anywhere. Could he really be all alone? This was too much for Stanley to take, too much for any man to take. He fell to his knees, bursting into half moans, half sobs, the guttural retching of life from a man denied any hope, any reason to keep going. Here on the floor he lay prone, paralyzed by fear for nearly a full hour. But when at last he began to move about and survey the situation, he found a keypad behind the boss's desk. What could it mean? Was it a sign of hope for Stanley's future? Alas, it was not. For although this keypad guarded the terrible secret of Stanley's past, it had been assigned a 4-digit code so devious and so random that no man could ever hope to guess it. 2845. Statistically, nearly impossible to guess blindly, ever. Stanley just sat around twiddling his thumbs. Stanley simply began entering random codes into the keypad, knowing full well the sheer statistical unlikelihood that this would ever result in a correct combination. If he knew that the combo was 2845...
So, the game has encouraged this kind of behavior, and now I'm exhibiting it. I'm pushing it boundaries everywhere that I go. I expect that there could be interesting content behind any corner. Anything that I do could result in the narrator sort of acknowledging that I have done something, which is the reward that I get for playing this game. And it's interesting. There's a balance between when the game actually does and can react to that kind of input, to the play that I exhibit or exert, and then the sort of confrontation of the fact that what I can do as a player, given the constraints of the game, is so almost infinite. It's so vast that there's no way that the game could recognize all of the different possibilities that I could do. And so, of course, I'm going to run into things that don't give me that kind of feedback.
It would be another story entirely, but no, 2845.
I'm not sure if there's
By
more.
simply pushing random buttons on the keypad, Stanley happened to input the correct code by sheer luck.
I'm not sure if there's more that I can
He
do
stepped into the newly opened
along this
passageway.
path. I kind of don't think there is. I kind of think this is just linear until we get to the end, and then there's 2 buttons, and I already pressed both of them. So I'm gonna begin the game again, and do something different. I don't know what. Well,
Was I
so
sitting there? Stanley wondered to himself. Minutes? Days? Centuries? Did something crucial happen while my
Just loads.
senses were turned? He made a note to be more careful with time from now on.
That feels like a response to me restarting the game. There's also a question of
When Stanley came to a set of 2 open doors, he entered the door on his left.
even if there is more content down that particular path, I have questions about whether or not I'm going to find it. And it's not my intention to play this game exhaustively. Like the game has made it clear that it is, first of all, it's very clever. So I'm not gonna just sort of easily outthink it. And secondly, it contains an enormous amount of content. It's extremely dense. So I could, play this game for hours upon hours upon hours, not just because there's that much content, but because I would have to play it that long to discover all of the content. And I'm not going to do that. That's not how I'm going to approach this. Even for my 4 in February challenge, I consider sort of exploring a representative amount of this game to be enough completing it. So I'm gonna do that, and the fact that that branch at that point has presented itself as being fairly well exhausted makes me think, well, I'm going to explore a different direction because I think there will probably be opportunities for me to find more obvious content somewhere else. I'm going to rely on,
the meeting room, Stanley knew it perfectly well.
the alternate reality game principle of the internet figuring everything out to cue me in on anything particularly interesting that I should try.
Perhaps he wanted to stop by the employee lounge first, just to admire it.
Oh yes, the employee lounge.
Ah, yes.
The beautiful blue
employee lounge. It had really been worth the detour after all, just to spend a few moments here in this immaculate, beautifully constructed room. Stanley simply stood here, drinking it all in.
I can't remember how long I stood around last time, but since then I've become sort of even more aware of standing around as a mechanic that this game uses actively. So I'm gonna hang out
have mysteriously vanished,
for at least a little bit.
These chairs and some paintings. Really worth it.
So
At this point, Stanley's obsession with this room bordered on creepy and reflected poorly on his overall personality. It's possible that this is why everyone left.
This is, I think this is narration that we've heard before. This sounds all like pretty much the same.
Stanley sat around waiting for more dialogue, but when a long time had passed and there was no more, he decided that the game was trying to send him a message.
I don't remember if we got to that. Again, that could be the end of this. It is absolutely not clear to me, right? Because the game is so self-aware that when it tells me to do something, I am immediately suspicious of that thing. I've entered an interesting phase of playing this game where the game presented me with several obvious choices, and made it clear that it was a game about making those choices and seeing what the varying results of making choices is. Now I certainly don't feel like I have done everything in the game, but I do feel like I have made the choices that the game has sort of made obvious to me. I think there's more stuff down this path that I haven't done, so I'm going to explore that. But I'm getting to the point where I'm not sure how much more I should be playing, which again, this is something that the Stanley Parable is anticipating, and this is how it frames itself. It has framed itself as being all about this sort of moment of why am I playing this game? What am I doing in this game? It feels very self-aware. Um, Even as I approach a sort of a gameplay mode, a phase, a sensation that in a lot of games would be something that you would try hard to avoid in a player. This sense of
But
I'm
at
not
last, he had
sure.
enough of the amazing room and took the first open door on his left to get back to business.
I'm not sure what I'm supposed to. Did I? I did go this
Stanley
way.
was so
I'm gonna go
bad at
this way.
following directions, it's incredible he wasn't fired years ago.
I never
Look,
took this
Stanley, I
lift
think
all the way.
perhaps we've gotten off on the wrong foot here.
I'm gonna do
I'm
that.
not your enemy, really, I'm not. I realize that investing your trust in someone else can be difficult, but the fact is that the story has been about nothing but you all this time. There's someone you've been neglecting, Stanley. Someone you've forgotten about. Please, stop trying to make every decision by yourself. Now, I'm not asking for me, I'm asking for her. This is it, Stanley. Your chance to redeem yourself. To put your work aside. To let her back into your life. She's been waiting.
So again, now this feels like a major branch, and again, we'll see. We'll see how far it goes. But I like how this game is sort of continually introducing bizarre new elements, which a narrative will often do like once or twice in the entire narrative. And Stanley Parable also does it like once or twice. It's just it does it once or twice in each 15-minute run through. Just really interesting narrative structure.
That's her, Stanley. You need to be the one to do this. To reach out to her. If you can truly place your faith in another, then pick up the phone.
I want to know what happens.
Oh, Stanley, is that you? Hold on, sweetie. Sorry to keep you waiting. I'm just pulling the bread out of the oven. All right. Okay, there we go.
Can't move.
All right, now, I want you to come in and tell me all about your
Gotcha. Oh, come on. Did you actually think you had a loving wife who'd want to commit their life to you? I'm trying to make a point here, Stanley. I'm trying to get you to see something. Come inside. Let me show you what's really going on here.
This is great.
This is a very sad story about the death of a man named Stanley. Stanley is quite a boring fellow. He has a job that demands nothing of him, and every button that he pushes is a reminder of the inconsequential nature of his existence.
So now I am really Stanley.
Look at him there, pushing
I'm
buttons.
I'm
doing
Stanley
exactly
more than I
what he's
have
told
ever
to
been.
do. Now he's pushing a button. Now he's eating lunch. Now he's going home. Now he's coming back to work. One might even feel sorry for him, except that he's chosen this life.
I'm gonna not press. Oh God, I'm gonna press something else. Won't let me press something else.
But in his mind, he can go on fantastic adventures. From behind his desk, Stanley dreamed of wild expeditions into the unknown, fantastic discoveries of new lands. It was wonderful, and each day that he returned to work was a reminder that none of it would ever happen to him.
Press Y to watch TV.
And so he began to fantasize about his own job. First, he imagined that one day while at work, he stepped up from his desk to realize that all of his co-workers, his boss, everyone in the building...
So, I think every button that I've pressed has done this, but I'm only just now catching on. Because, of course, this desk that's in the corner now, that's behind me, that wasn't here when I came in. In fact,
suddenly vanished.
No, that wasn't here when I came in. I'm pretty sure this filing cabinet, I'm sure wasn't there. I probably would have noticed that. The clock, I know wasn't there because there was a TV on the wall, and that was the first time that I noticed that something was going on because I had looked around the room a couple times and I'd seen the TV specifically, and now it's not there. So it takes me a minute when you just switch out elements of the scene quietly like that. The player is likely to not catch on right away. But when you do it repetitively, then of course eventually I will catch on.
The thought excited him terribly. So he went further. He imagined that he came to 2 open doors and that he could go through either. At last, choice. It barely even mattered what lay behind each door. The mere thought that his decisions would mean something was almost too wonderful to behold. As he wandered through this fantasy world, he began to fill it with many possible paths and destinations. Down one path lay an enormous round room with monitors and mind controls. And down another was a yellow line that weaved in many directions. And down another was a game with a baby. And he called it the Stanley Parable. It was such a wonderful fantasy, and so in his head he relived it again, and then again, and again, over and over, wishing beyond hope that it would never end, that he might always feel this free. Surely there's an answer down some new path, mustn't there be? Perhaps if he played just one more time.
Oh my god. Press 3 to tell your wife you love her. But
there is no answer.
Amazing.
How could there possibly be? In reality, all he's doing is pushing the same buttons he always has. Nothing has changed. The longer he spends here, the more invested he gets, the more he forgets which life is the real one. And I'm trying to tell him this, that in this world he can never be anything but an observer, that as long as he remains here, he's slowly killing himself. But he won't listen to me. He won't stop. Here, watch this. Stanley, the next time the screen asks you to push a button, do not do it.
The ticking clock is fantastic. Just subtle sound design, making me aware of time passing. I can't not do this. There's nothing else. God damn this game.
You see? Can he just not hear me? How can I tell him in a way that he'll understand that every second he remains here, he's electing to kill himself? How can I get him to see what I see? How can I make him look at himself? I suppose I can't, not in the way I want him to. But I don't make the rules. I simply play to my intended purpose, the same as Stanley. We're not so different, I suppose. I'll try once more to convey all this to him. I'm compelled to. I must. Perhaps, well, maybe this time he'll see. Maybe this time. And I tried again, and Stanley pushed a button. And I tried again, and Stanley pushed a button.
Oh, God. That's darker. That's I think one of the endings that I was waiting for. I mean that actually, if there's a true ending to this game that works on mostly on, oh shit. Okay, so if there's an ending to this game that works primarily on the level that I am engaging with the entire game on, I think it's that one, because it's not too recursive. The recursive stuff is distracting, and it's wonderful, and it's like, it plays with my brain in a wonderful way, but it's also difficult to process. And so, within the context of a 15-minute game, when I'm playing through in 15 minutes, there's only so much that I get out of the idea of, a museum to the game built within the game. That's a lovely image, and it's been dancing through my head for the last day. But it's also something that's, almost too abstract to like really be immensely satisfying within the context of the game, at least for me. And it's entirely possible that this is super subjective, and every player is going to sort of have a different frequency that they resonate to. But that one for me, that was that was not about this. It kept the idea of the Stanley Parable as a parable, right? It continued to be a story about Stanley all the way through, rather than becoming a story about me, the player. And it continued to sort of, with this cynical idea that I think is one of the things at the heart of this game. That there's this modern uh, uh, release of agency that is kind of depressing. That people sort of give up choices that they have in order to sort of fit inside of the system that exists. Maybe that's a lot to like read into that the philosophy of that ending. I don't think it is, and that's maybe influenced by interactions that I've had with Davey. But I think that he's capable of that kind of cynical perspective, and he's capable of expressing it through a game like this. And the ending kind of obliquely references itself. It talks about the game being the product of Stanley's imagination, in a way that is very nice. It's like a single level of Inception. It's just a little bit recursive. And it ends in a way that frames the entire experience again, that sort of makes it feel cohesive. And I like all of that stuff. The other thing I like about that ending is that it references other endings. And so by playing through that ending, I see two things that I have done and one that I haven't done. And the one that I haven't done is the yellow line, and people have been shouting yellow line, yellow line. So somebody give me a hint as to where I can find the yellow line, and I'm going to go explore the yellow line when we come back in just a minute. All right?